Welcome back to Sports Medicine on Tap. My name is Brandon O'Line. I'm sitting in Neck of the Woods Brewing Company with my good friend Dr. Frey. Dr. Frey, what's going on?
Not a whole heck of a lot, man.
Just another good old Tuesday in South Jersey, drinking some delicious beer here at Neck of the Woods.
Is there much going on in this area at this point in time? Is there excitement over
Oh
anything?
yeah, it's just the weekend after Championship Sunday. Like I mentioned plenty of times in the show before, one of my favorite weekends of football. And it gets even better when the Eagles are in it, and we got to see a little victory celebration in Philly, and we're one more away.
That was crazy. Is it NFC champion? They didn't win the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
They're just going to the Super Bowl, which is
It's great.
awesome. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But it looked like the crowds in the streets and the celebrations and the craziness. Only in Philly, man.
Only in Philly. So funny story about back when the Eagles won the Super Bowl back in 2017. I was living in Philadelphia. I was living about 2.5 blocks off of Broad Street.
Wow. Yeah.
And down in South Philly. So the night they won the NFC Championship, it was a Sunday night. I watched the game, got excited. I had work the next morning. My wife and I went to bed.
Yeah.
And we were laying in bed, and we just heard this. I don't know how to describe it other than loudness. Just sounds like it was just loud. You could hear loudness outside.
Right.
And so we're like, in our pajamas, about to go to bed, and we looked at each other like, we got to see what's going on. Like,
sure.
You could just hear people having a good time. So we went from pajamas to fully dressed, winter coats on. We just walked down Broad Street, and it was a party. And there were people running around, shooting fireworks, blasting music, riding on top of cars, driving through the street, screaming. It was a good old, and whatever. And then, again, like I mentioned, I lived in Philly, so when they actually won the Super Bowl, it was even more chaos.
Of course, yeah.
It was even crazier scene walking up and down Broad Street. But seeing all the scenes from like social media and stuff from this past weekend, I was like, oh yeah, I know what that's like. I've lived it. I've seen it.
Yeah.
I'm definitely past the point where I want to be there. I'm glad I can watch it from afar and not be all involved, right?
But it is very cool to experience that.
Oh yeah, it's 100%.
I was talking with Brian behind the bar again, and he was saying, because I'm a transplant here, right? Like I'm from New York originally, and he's like, it's got to be kind of a fun thing to experience. Coming down here and seeing this crazy excitement and how much because it's true that this city, Philadelphia, and this area, they love their teams.
Oh yeah,
so much.
Yeah,
they also love to hate their teams
so much.
Yeah, but it's a very cool. And in New York, don't get me wrong, people love their teams, but it's not quite the same level.
It's just a little different.
Yeah, it is.
It's just something special about Philadelphia and just how the fans are, and it's a unique group.
Right.
And it's not just Philly. There's other big sports towns that are really go all for it.
Of course.
And we're just living in just this Philadelphia
just
area, so we experience it.
Yeah.
And again, here we are, in South Jersey, and another South Jersey native, a Vineland guy, Isaiah Pacheco's back in the Super Bowl again. The Chiefs are trying to go for this three-peat, and the Eagles are going to have to hope for the best and stop this three-peat from happening.
That team is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, and we're going to get into it a little bit into the show. Just to give a quick shout out before we take a deep dive tonight for our sponsors, Virtual Orthopedics and Spine. They have you covered from runner's knee to dog walker's hip to yard work, back, and laptop wrist. Guess what? They have a doc for that. So find the right specialist for you at virtua.org/ortho.
Yeah.
So,
interesting night here before we get into it, right? Packed. And of course, it's Total Turf. Right? When we talk about Total Turf, the awesome setup, all the sports fields and whatnot. A number of kids running around.
Yeah.
So if you hear some kids in the background,
it is a packed house, and there's a group of about 6 or 7 young kids over there having a good time too. So
they wound down whatever event they were just competing in.
They got them soccer practice, field hockey practice, or whatever the case.
And mom and dad want a beer.
Yeah, they're hanging out. So we kind of set up the show to do our Super Bowl preview tonight. We have some things lined up for next week, so we're not going to be able to do it next week, but I think we have some interesting topics to talk about tonight.
Yeah.
At least again, we record the show on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Per what I looked up before I went to work this morning was that most news conferences and stuff didn't happen until this afternoon. So there might be some stuff that I may have missed.
Of course, right.
And then we're in the Super Bowl time. We have 2 weeks now.
Two-week period.
Injury reports and information is going to come out a little slower and a little later.
And it will evolve because there's more time.
Yeah. And there's some things that we're going to talk about to watch out on both ends of things that are old that could be interesting going forward, and some things that are new from this past weekend that are things to watch. So a bit of a context clue and a giveaway is I'm wearing a Brandon Graham jersey tonight. I just got this for Christmas.
Right.
I'm pretty weird and superstitious about when I get jerseys for Eagles players anymore. I don't usually get them until they're retired or kind of done. And unfortunately, Brandon Graham was the topic of our show and tore his triceps on his what was supposed to be his last year as an Eagle. So I was like, okay, I think it's safe to get his jersey because he's on his way out one way or another.
Not just yet.
But there's a lot of speculation right now. And again, there's no official reports out. There's nothing going on really right yet. It's news breaking, but there's a lot of speculation that Brandon Graham might have a chance to play in the Super Bowl after tearing his tricep tendon back in the end of November, which is really interesting to talk. It's a great discussion, right? Because
that's what we love.
You talk Super Bowl, Philadelphia Eagles, and Brandon Graham. Like there's a history there. Brandon Graham caused that strip sack on Tom Brady back in the Super Bowl and helped Eagles win their first one. So it's like he's a legend in the world of Philly sports.
Yeah.
So to give him an opportunity to play in the Super Bowl after what was supposed to be his final ride. He was going to go one more, that farewell tour that a lot of athletes like doing at the end of their career.
And you told me the last time we did the show about him, he's played more games than any other
Eagle, right?
Eagle in history, right? Like, and I think he's third in sacks in Eagles history. Like, and again, I don't know if the national media gives him enough of a spotlight or gives him enough credit. Like, he's been a huge part of this franchise for
a long time,
very long time. And so, like, it would be a nice way to give this guy a gift on the way out if it's possible.
Right, if it's possible. And we've mentioned before of, like, in our world of sports medicine, where these medical decisions sometimes come down to time, place, and, like, I think it's best described as an art and a science, right? Like, there's a science, we're educated, we know what we're talking about, and there's a little bit of an art of, like, if we can just manipulate, do this, or protect you in a certain amount of way, we can get something out of you to perform on the field.
Right.
And this speculation of Brandon Graham being, open or clear to play or playing in the Super Bowl, it doesn't mean that he's playing every defensive snap in the game.
Yeah.
I think it comes down to if we go down this rabbit hole, if he is cleared, he's playing a dozen plays.
If that.
Yeah. A handful of plays.
Yeah.
And it's just, again, as a ode to him, as a thank you for all he's done.
I think that's what it is.
It just, or at best, you clear him,
you
have him suited up, and he just doesn't play. He's just there in uniform, goes through the motion, warms up with the guys, and is just there as a leader. Yeah. But again, then you run the risk of, like, you use a roster spot for that.
That's exactly
and then that a little bit of strategy comes into play with that.
Yeah. This is still the Super Bowl, right? And this is, you don't get too many of these opportunities, and it's a highly competitive game. And as much as you want to do this for this guy, it's one thing if he can come out there and be a contributor, and it seems pretty evident he's going to be a contributor. But, we when he first had this injury, and we talked about it, the idea of him, it'll be like, I think it'll be 2.5 months from the time of the injury by the time the Super Bowl rolls around.
Yeah.
That's really early.
Really fast.
Really fast to try to come back. Yeah. We talked about Ray Lewis, right? Like deer antler.
The deer antler spray case of Ray Lewis, if you will.
Yeah.
It took him to go back to 2012, Ray Lewis had surgery roughly in the middle of October. So about 6 weeks earlier than Brandon Graham did. And it's about the same timeline to the Super Bowl. Actually, if anything, it's a week longer to the Super Bowl than it was for Ray Lewis because there's an extra game in the NFL season.
True,
now.
Good point.
So there's an extra week in the NFL season. So again, everything adds up. So Ray Lewis had a little bit more time in regards to that. So he had, about almost 4 months to push the envelope a little bit to the Super Bowl. And he played that whole playoff stretch for the Ravens, I believe.
He did play the whole playoff stretch?
Yeah. Which started in, so that was probably like 3-ish months for him.
I was going to say 3. Which is really fast. Incredibly fast.
Which could be just how interesting deer antler spray is, I guess. But again, that's all speculative if you believe in to use it or not, or whatever the case, if it works, whatever.
I think if you have an unlimited number of roster spots, it's a no-brainer. But if you don't, the idea that you're torn.
Yeah.
So the first question is, are you helping your team, right? And he's a great player.
Yeah.
He's helped the team dramatically, over the years. And I think Dr. Bernardini put it best at one point where he said, are you going to be the best version of yourself?
Right.
And if you're not the best version of yourself, is this version of yourself the right way to go? Are you hurting your team?
Right.
Are you taking a step down from whomever it is that will be filling in for you? Triceps are interesting, man. It depends on the position. Tackles might not be terribly difficult or terribly challenging for him, because that's more of a wrapping.
Yeah, that's more like a chest and
chest,
not
biceps,
so much,
even some back. It's getting off of blocks, clearing blocks,
pushing someone away.
Yeah, that's going to be the big challenge for him. And then Brandon Graham's sort of like his go-to move is that double hand
swipe.
Yeah. And then like he clears the hand off him, and then he goes by, and there's some triceps in that without question.
100%.
Yeah, some of that's biceps and whatnot, but there's some triceps, and so like I don't know. Let's say he passes some strength testing, and let's say the Eagles feel very indebted to him, which I can sort of see, right?
Yeah.
Like, and they're like, you know what, we're going to clear a spot. We're going to have a spot for you on the roster. And like you said, he gets in for like 10 plays.
Yeah.
Is he risking re-tearing it? And then the next question after that is, does he care?
Does he care?
Right. It's the last game of his career.
It could be
if he re-tears it, and you fix it, you fix it.
Yeah, like I think that's what it comes down to, right? Like if you think about it from his standpoint of like, look, I think running the gamble of potentially re-tearing this thing that you had surgically fixed on your last potential game ever is probably more doable than like really sitting there in the offseason thinking, should I go through another 17-game season and do this again just to finish off to prove a point?
Right. And you were saying when we did the last show, you were saying how these guys don't like to go out on somebody else's terms, on an injury's terms. They want to go out on their terms. Yeah. And this would allow him to do that. He'll go out 100%. On his terms, especially if they win. Like, can you imagine if he's... If he's like he feels like I'm on the cusp, I can do it. They win and he's not part of it. He is he might feel like he's not, but like he's part of what got them there, right? He's still a presence. He's still a leader, and he played a huge part of his season.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting too. There is a little bit of multi-factor here. It's like one is like he's on the sideline anyway, so his vocality and leadership can be felt that way.
Right.
But having him on the field could present something. But and again,
that's true.
Something that we always talk about on the show. We don't have actual access to his actual medical records.
Yeah,
we don't know.
We're not revealing any specific information about him.
We don't know what surgical technique he underwent.
That's true.
And I think the invention and increased use of the Arthrex Speed Bridge is a very key point that we don't know. If he got it done, it's been kind of taking the world of orthopedics a little bit by storm of just accelerated speeding of recovery.
Making things happen fast.
Things happen fast. We talked about Aaron Rodgers before. He had the speed bridge on his Achilles.
Yeah.
He was walking around a couple weeks after throwing light passes during a walkthrough, and it was like so phenomenal. He almost came back before anybody could have if the Jets had playoff contention.
A big thing we talk about on a lot of these repairs and these injuries, like MCLs, and actually with the Achilles, has been internal brace. Internal brace, like you have this other structure. Fiber tape and one in there sharing the load so that you can accelerate some of the recovery, right? I hate to say this, but an internal brace doesn't necessarily work for this particular type of situation. Right. But a speed bridge, it's almost like the way that we do a lot of rotator cuff repairs. It allows like compression of over a fairly large area on the back of the elbow, on the olecranon. So compression of that tendon, that torn tendon, back to its footprint across the board, and it helps with the healing. One of the older ways that we used to do this particular procedure was drill holes through where the tendon is supposed to attach the olecranon, and then you put sutures in the tendon, pass those sutures through the drill hole, and then tie the sutures together over a bone bridge, kind of sucking the tendon back down to the back of the elbow.
Right.
But this really just kind of plasters it right down.
Yeah.
And to be perfectly honest, there are two techniques using the anchors. There's that speed bridge technique, which is the way that I think that most people do this repair at this particular point in time. And it is true. I think it accelerates the recovery. There's another way of doing it, which is almost like a combination between the tunnels and the anchors. And I actually think it's Arthrex. I actually think it's a great way of doing it. And essentially what you do is you do drill holes. You wrap the sutures basically through these drill holes, then back to itself. And it's a difficult thing to explain. You wind up using fewer anchors when you do it that way, but it creates a lot of friction within the system because the sutures are basically the stitches that you're using to repair are like wrapped through bone and do all these like really hard like right angle turn here, right angle turn there. And so like it's almost hard just to pull it out because of that. And then when you anchor that down into the bone, like It works really, really, really well. So, I don't know if he had a speed bridge. I don't know if he had bone tunnels. I don't know if he had what I'm talking about right now. My gut is that he probably had speed bridge kind of repair, 4 anchors into the, and it does make it quicker. The bottom line is, though, 2.5 months is very
fast.
Very fast.
So, again, I don't know much about Brandon Graham's direct rehab, his recovery, and all that stuff. I just literally Google search tricep tendon repair rehab protocols.
Yeah.
Couple different ones from across the country, like University of Colorado and a couple of different places.
Yeah.
And at a 2.5 month marker, their first line is discontinue using brace. like okay, so we're getting out of a brace and we're going to start. It says start like light.
I'll be honest, I get him out a little sooner than that. But still.
But, at the 6-week mark, get him out of the brace, get moving. Start light resistance training and other things like that.
You're doing active range of motion, active extension finally.
Trying to get like active extension, trying to get that range of motion. So it's like, wait a minute, we're talking about playing a Super Bowl, but then a protocol that's of a similar injury is only telling you to start moving your elbow.
Just moving it,
and you want to go punch a 300-pound offensive lineman to get past him. It's interesting concept.
Fairly inconsistent with logic.
Right. But then, with that being said, too, is like if you look up the speed bridge technique, there isn't really like established protocols for that yet. It's still kind of new, and I don't think anyone's really putting their name on it yet because it's just not as popular, or just hasn't been around long enough to where these other places have these protocols. Like I said, you just Google it, you get like 10 of them on the first sheet, and you click it up, PDF comes up, and it gives you month by month of your goals and what you're doing for the most part. But this is something I feel like is kind of on the newer side of things, and it could work. And who's to say? They put him in a brace that limits him. If he doesn't have full extension,
that would be one of the keys. I think there would be an extension block, and basically he wouldn't be able to fully extend. Basically, kind of lock his elbow probably in this position. And if he's going to tackle, he's going to wrap with the other arm and bring it. And this way, the brace is doing a lot of the work in terms of getting by, punching. This way, he doesn't have to actively use. I think that would be the only way for him to potentially get by, play a few plays, and do this. It's funny when you're saying like the protocols, and we all have our go-tos. Right? Like I think University of Delaware puts out a lot of really good protocols. I personally go to Mass General has put out a number of protocols. Now I'll take Mass General, and I usually then take it and make them my own. Like no, I do this a little bit different, this a little bit differently, but. Honestly, almost all these protocols are almost the same.
They're very
variations
similar.
On all of them.
There's if you look at it, there's a slight variation of like one will say get this done by week 7, the other one says by week 8. Or very small. Like we're talking like give or take plus or minus 14 days on almost all protocols. Like it's all kind of the same. Like
I can promise you, none of them say go play football. Week 10.
One of them, one of them was pretty funny. Is that I was reading? It said. Protocols, it just said after a certain point, it just said minimum of 5 to 6 months before return to play, and it was just like a bold statement line, and I was like, well, that's certainly nowhere near where he's at. He's not 5, 2.5. He's halfway there.
And Ray Lewis did it. He was 4 months. You said,
4 months,
yeah,
about 4
which
months.
is still super fast.
Super fast, right.
Yeah, but like you're gonna cut a month and a half off of that.
That was like freakishly fast about 13 years ago. Now we're talking about it again, even in half the time. So it's like.
The only thing you really guys are going for him, the only way he has the slightest bit of chance is that fact that this is the last game he's going to play in his career. That's the only thing that he's going for.
And, it's like, is it worth it?
And he has to favor the organization. Sorry, go ahead.
No. Like, there's so much more to just like, he's just going to go out there and play. Like, obviously, they're not going to like, well, he looks like crap. Let's just get him out there because we owe this guy something. Like, if he's functional and can get through
reasonably
well and can get through practice, obviously they're not going to put him through like a training camp in the next 2 weeks to get him like. But I'm sure, like again, we've mentioned his quote unquote 9 to 5 for the last 2.5 months has been rehab.
Yeah,
he showed up to practice, showed up to meetings, and he's doing nothing but that. His 8 hours a day of work, if you will. It's probably just getting treated by professionals, trying to get better.
Normal humans don't have this.
And normal humans go for an hour or two PT 2-3 times a week, whatever they can fit in their schedule, whatnot. But it's a little different in his case, right? And all the, I mean, he's been asked by a few people, like there are some locker room interviews of what's going to happen, and he just says, "I've been working. We'll see what happens. I have a meeting. I'll meet with the medical staff and see what they say." And he's pushing it off. And I think he was on the local sports radio WIP on Monday. He goes,
and he always does that, and he's awesome.
Yeah, he's great. He goes, "I'm just taking it a day at a time, and we're going to see what happens." And again, I think I think there's a certain point, I think, in an athlete career of like, you can get by base of your IQ of your sport when you're a little physically behind, because you know the chess game a little bit better.
Right.
And I don't know the ages or like how well offensive line of the Chiefs are, if they're rookies or young, or how old they are.
Right.
But you're telling me Brandon Graham at 75% probably can still beat a 2-year guard, second-year guard in the NFL, but just by some, master trickery of something.
Why leave that?
Right. Just being a veteran.
And what a lift for the rest of the team.
Yeah.
If all of a sudden they get, this guy back out on the field.
Right.
Like, and there's some value to that.
Right. But then there, from another point of like numbers that I'm going to say numbers, but I don't have them. Nolan Smith has been playing really good in the fact that Brandon Graham's been out. So his play's gone uptick, and he was I think he was a 30th overall draft pick for the Eagles back in the day, a couple years ago. So like, yeah,
he was one of that Georgia crew.
Yeah, he was one of the Georgia guys. Yeah. So you have these guys coming in, and a young guy playing really well. So it's like, well, not that we don't miss him, but we don't really need him.
Yeah.
But heck, it's football. If something happens to any of those guys, I think 75% Brandon Graham is probably better than most the next guy up you just elevated from the practice squad.
Right.
I think there's an argument there to like. On
the flip side of that, what if it comes down to like this, some critical play, and he's the guy who's supposed to make the tackle or supposed to, whatever it is, hold the corner, and he can't.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like how devastating is that? Like,
he tries.
We're thinking about all the upside. It could go the other way very quickly.
And I mean, again, I think it's just one of those things where the situation is worth the attempt at seeing what human potential has, because we saw a little glimpse of that to kind of transition to a little bit of a next topic here.
Right.
Is a little recap of the NFC Championship game for the Eagles offensive line is the story of Landon Dickerson and Cam Jurgens, how they kind of had to battle through a lot of injury and pain to figure out a way to win for this game.
Yeah.
Quick backstory, Cam Jurgens hurt his back in the
what position does he play?
Center. Kind of important. We just lost one of the better centers in all time of
Who's
football.
that?
Jason Kelce, no big deal. So I also thought, I was like, man, I feel like there should be an article. Someone's got to blow up the speculation, probably go viral, like start a rumor that Jason Kelce's going to return because the Eagles had trouble at center. But I was like, there's no way he's coming back or whatnot. But so Cam Jurgens was on the injury report for a back injury that he had in the divisional round. He was listed as active for the game. However, he wasn't in the starting lineup. Landon Dickerson, who's the starting guard for the Eagles most of this year, transitioned to center.
Very good guard.
Yeah. It transitioned to center, and I believe Steen is his name, went to guard. Landon Dickerson played center in college, so he was confident doing it. He took all the practice reps or whatever, so they prepared him for it. But then, of course, the unthinkable happens, and that Landon Dickerson gets hurt, which I think is potentially like an MCL injury. He got rolled up on his knee, which is pretty common for his position
in
group.
that position. Right?
Yeah. So he's limping around in the first half, battling through this injury, and he's trying to figure it out. And then there's actually there was a cut through on, I think it was in the second half. Cam Jurgens was getting ready to go in, and they're like arguing on who's going in, and Cam Jurgens like, no, I'm going in, I'll finish the game. So Landon Dickerson started the game for Cam Jurgens, played the first half, got injured. Then Cam Jurgens came in and played for Landon Dickerson in the second half because he got injured.
Right.
So they kind of were just back and forth.
That is a very interesting scenario.
I read an article this morning about it, and they were just like, it took literally everything out of both of us to figure out the way to win this game. And it takes a team, obviously, but
sure.
A kind of important role of, next to the quarterback, the center is the other person on the football field who touches the ball every play.
Extremely important, yeah.
There's a lot of things going on in the role of the center. So the fact that those guys played each a half, battled through a lot of pain and injury, is pretty impressive.
Right, yeah.
So that's something so that's one of the ones, if you want to put in the category of like, let's keep our eye on this.
So curious
what happens.
And especially with MCL, right? Like that is one of the ones where we talk about, the devil's in the details. That is one of the ones 2 weeks from now, or 2 weeks from the game, like he might be back to normal, right? And back injuries, I don't know what the Cam Jurgens injury was specifically. Again, we don't have access to these guys' medical charts. We're not really revealing information about them. But back injuries in general, all over the map, right? Yeah. So we may get to the Super Bowl, and they're both back to normal, right? Like MCL, grade 1 MCL, mild sprain MCL, 9-10 days. That's usually where we get it. Grade 2 MCL, 14, 21 days. Grade 3, whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
But usually you get back relatively quickly. So like Dickerson maybe bring back up to speed. Back.
Who knows?
Who knows, man? Like who knows? He might be 100% by the time 2 weeks from now. He might be worse than he was this past Sunday.
He could have one misstep, or it's one of those crazy things. Again, this is all speculative. Let's just arbitrarily say like it's something disc related or something, and he's having these ridiculous symptoms.
That's my guess.
You would imagine, right? It's a very large person pushing a lot of weight, moving people, all this stuff. So there's a good chance that it could happen that way.
Yeah.
But again, those back injuries, they'll have ups and downs and all those things. So even in the article I was reading is that Cam Jurgens skipped out of media one day after practice because he's like, I got to go. I'm going to massage. I got to try to get ready for this game. Like, he did everything he could. Again, his 9 to 5 was just rehabbing his back to get ready for Sunday.
Yeah.
And came pretty close, but still didn't start, but then ended up playing anyway.
I'm going to get slightly off topic here. I find it very interesting. Very interesting. This team seems to have great chemistry, and I think this is a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
And this is a team that had horrible chemistry last year, right? They went off a cliff.
Yeah, oh my God. It was
everything
deep dive.
Unraveled.
Blew up.
And then what's so different? Is it Saquon? Is that the difference between the 2 years?
Yeah.
Why is the chemistry so great, so excellent this year when it was so bad last year? How does that happen?
I mean, I don't know. Like, I think we got some additional pieces. I think the defensive changes that we made in the offseason were the
Fair
biggest
enough.
ones.
There were huge defensive additions.
Yeah. I think the biggest one is our linebacker, Zach Bond. I mean, he's playing his tail off. He's playing lights out. He goes from a practice squad special teams guy for the Saints to being an all-pro linebacker for the Eagles in a matter of in a year's time. So it's just like, oh my God, like, this guy's playing. And me and my buddies were talking about it. We're like, what happens to Bond after the season? And I was like, well, it depends how far we go. If we end up winning the whole thing, pay him as much as he wants. Because the Eagles haven't had a really good linebacker in a while.
Yeah, that's not their emphasis usually.
It's not.
They emphasize the line.
They got the D-line on offensive, defensive line. They're stacked there. They have really good at both of them. But to find this diamond in the rough is like a kind of just an ode to Howie Roseman and the stuff that he's done.
He's done very well, man.
And to put these pieces together and to be relevant, again, just, after 3 years.
They were talking about firing Nick Sirianni earlier this year, right? And now the chemistry is amazing.
Yeah, they start the year 2-2 and everything's on fire, everything's fine. Then they go win, I don't know what it was, like 10 in a row or something. Everything's hunky-dory and we're back in it and we're going for it.
That's Philadelphia.
Yeah,
that's
what we just talked about earlier, right? We love to love them and we love to hate them too when they're not doing too good.
That guy's a good coach, man.
Yeah.
There's no arguing. There was a low point in the season where he's arguing with some fans. You can't do that.
No.
But the guy knows football.
Yeah.
And he's good for this team.
Yeah, and I think he's a good players coach, and he has a good relationship with all the guys.
Exactly.
And I mean, even when he went up there on the stage to get the trophy after the NFC Championship, the first thing he said was, "How about our quarterback?" and just started praising Jalen Hurts.
Well done.
And right away. And I mean, Jalen Hurts is a guy who's got a lot of speculation, a lot of criticism over his time, and all the different things that he's done, all the games he's lost, all the games that he's won, and just different things. So
I have to imagine he has the highest winning percentage of any quarterback in Eagles history. Oh, right? Like, there's no way that
he's
the
first one ever to bring him to 2 Super Bowls. He's got all kinds of different things. I saw something today that I think in his last 7 playoff starts, he has no turnovers or no interceptions. He has a costly turnover in this last Super Bowl against the Chiefs. So hopefully that doesn't happen in 2 weeks. So we'll see.
And this sounds ridiculous, but the tush push, the brotherly shove, whatever, like, it is an incredible advantage.
Oh yeah,
incredible over the rest of in other leagues. Other teams try it, and some do it with moderate success, but part of that is the fact that you have Jalen Hurts. That's why that works so well.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah, and I mean, again, it does come from that, and same thing with that. The tush push brotherly shove is you see it now, and I mean, it was a pivotal play in the Bills Chiefs game.
Right.
Josh Allen, they went for it, and they didn't get it. Now on 4th down, and that cost them the game.
Yeah.
And again,
now we're playing Kansas City.
Now we're here at Kansas City.
I just said we.
And you've been indoctrinated into South Jersey and Philly area.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's just something to see of what's going to happen, and I think the exchange that happened I think it was the 3rd quarter of the goal line stand or the goal line interaction with the Washington Commanders and the Eagles. All those penalties back to back to back to where it almost came to the refs almost just gave us a touchdown.
Right.
Which was the craziest sequence of events I've seen in football in a long time.
So I was on call and I was working, so I missed basically the entirety of the game. And I didn't hear it, and I heard about that after the fact. That's crazy. I had no idea that was even like.
No, I didn't know the thing.
But it makes a lot of sense, right?
Well, yeah, if you're going to just keep sitting here and keep fouling over and over and over again, it's just going to end up.
It's not the spirit of the game.
Yeah,
and eventually the refs could be,
Yeah. So I think it'll be interesting to see how all this kind of unfolds. Again, I like Super Bowl because there's 2 weeks in between, so there's a lot of time. A lot of time for things to develop. A lot of times for guys to get healthy, which is like the biggest thing.
Sure.
So we'll see. And then another one for the Eagles docket here is Kenneth Gainwell, our backup running back, left the NFC Championship game with a concussion. So
he's good. I don't know if he gets enough credit nationwide as well.
Right. And I mean, he's kind of hiding in the shadow of the greatness that Saquon Barkley's doing right now.
Oh my God.
Unbelievable.
It's amazing.
You go 60 yards first play of the game. Just the whole game. Washington had a great opening drive. They went for it on fourth down a bunch of times. They converted. They ended up getting points on the board. Great.
Yeah.
Eagles touch the ball, touchdown instantly. Like, okay, this game's going to get out of hand. And sure enough, it was a close game.
Yeah.
It was kind of like, at least in fear that it could turn.
They could. They were within striking distance until the very, very end. Yeah.
And then it was just a couple extra turnovers. They got some extra, fumbles bounced our way, and then we just, we won the turnover battle. We got 5 turnovers in the NFC Championship, and you drop 55 points. I mean, that's
Well, what a selfless athlete! What a selfless guy Saquon has proven to be. And this is not meant to be a knock on the Giants, but sadly, it's a little bit of a knock on the Giants.
Oh, yeah.
Could you imagine if he's on almost any other team in the NFL? He's maybe not almost any other team, but most teams in the NFL.
Yeah.
Like the conversation that surrounded him has been like he's a great back, maybe never lived up to his Penn State potential, but a really good back.
Yeah.
Could you imagine if his whole career was on a team like this? He'd be talked about as one of the all-time greats. Yeah, like
without a doubt.
Incredible.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just one of those things where, again, it's just kind of Howie Roseman, how he builds a team, right? There's been a lot of attention and detail orchestrating and building an offensive line and a defensive line. And we have one of the better, recognized coaches in the NFL for offensive line and our run game coordinator.
Right.
And then you bring, and that's what, it's funny, I watched the game with a friend of mine who's a Giants fan, so it was kind of hard for him to watch Saquon do so well and reach a Super Bowl in his first year in an Eagles jersey of all things, right? Like, difficult to watch, but he goes, just the Giants didn't put enough around him to do good. They decided to pay Daniel Jones, who they ended up cutting.
Right.
So you pay Daniel Jones, you lose him. You don't pay Saquon Barkley, you don't get him, so you don't get either of them. So you just kind of stand
Rebuild.
there. Yeah, now you're rebuilding again.
Yeah. And Daniel Jones was a good quarterback, and he had a good year at the right time.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so it was almost like you can't really criticize the Giants at that point in time that he really had a good year at the right time for to earn payment.
And I think it just the time and place of it, right? Like just the running back wasn't a valued position for the league for a little bit there. And it was.
Do you think it trends back towards?
I think it does, because I think
the Bill Parcells, just running defense.
Well, yeah, I think Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry made a point this year.
Right.
They both left their respective teams.
Yeah.
Both of their new teams ended up making a far deep playoff run, and they both did really good.
How does Baltimore not win? I hate them, but they're so good. They really are.
And again, you put a good running back behind a team that's really good on the offensive line and knows how to run the ball really well. Then you have this great success. And granted, there's a little comparison, if you will, of Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts being scrambling quarterbacks, and they can move pretty well.
Right.
Like, that helps. That helps offset a little bit of the pressure on the actual running back and changes. But again, Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, both freak athletes, and definitely at this point, I think they both arguably can say that they're both outliers on the upper echelon of running backs.
Oh, for sure.
We've seen in recent history, and just almost, you can even argue all
That's
time.
5-10 years. Yeah.
Like they're up there in the discussions with the greats.
But it's back to it was Bill Parcells type football, and then you have Bill Walsh on the West Coast offense, and a much more exciting, I can say at times, maybe a more exciting brand of football, passing the ball, this and that, and Tom Brady, Mahomes, like the obviously football went in that direction.
Yeah.
But now you get back to this like very basic winning concept. Good
ground
defense.
and pound and go for it.
Yeah, and don't fumble, control the ball, don't turn it over, have a good running game, and control the clock, And I think with that too is what you mentioned it. Like I think the era of the Drew Brees, the Tom Brady, the Manning brothers, all those guys were great quarterback passers. Right.
They were great passers, and now we have an influx of great athletes who can also pass the ball, but also can run and shake the brakes off of anybody.
Yeah.
And it's like,
RPOs.
and then you see it with Jaden Daniels. I mean, he took Washington all the way to the NFC Championship.
That guy's got a future, man.
Ran into the number 1 defense right now. So I mean, you kind of run into some issues.
But even still played very well.
But yeah,
you know,
and again, one of my friends is a Commanders fan, and we talked about it after the game. He goes, and I even said to him, like, you guys got a future. Like you got a good start. Like you left a toxic ownership situation.
Yeah.
You started to rebuild. You got a good coach in Dan
Good
Quinn.
news, Dr. Brandt.
Yeah, right? For sure. And now you got this young stud quarterback again. And I think it's funny. I feel bad for the Giants. They have too much camera and too much media of just bad off-season, the viral video of the GM sitting in his office when his son was telling him.
That was Hard Knocks, right?
Yeah, Hard Knocks, when they had Hard Knocks. And his son was telling him, hey, man, you should try to trade up for Jaden Daniels. He should be really good. And they don't, and then now you have to see Jaden Daniels twice a year in the wrong jersey.
Right. And the same thing with trading Saquon, like the whole conversation.
Oh, yeah.
What if he goes to the Eagles?
I won't be able to sleep if he's in an Eagles jersey. And sure enough, and then it happens. So,
yeah.
But then
we were going to talk about a couple other things.
Yeah.
And it's just so much fun to get rambling.
Oh, yeah. And, we're running all over the place. So then this is our Super Bowl preview, and the Philadelphia Eagles aren't the only team in the Super Bowl here. We're going to talk about the Kansas City Chiefs, and fortunately for them, they came out of the AFC Championship game and kind of the playoffs pretty healthy.
Yeah.
And if anything, they're at their healthiest right now, which is the time to be healthy, which is good.
That's a team that keeps getting better.
And again, it's kind of ironic. Like, we're kind of cycling back some names of people we've talked about. Now they have Hollywood Brown back.
And when he had gotten injured, which was a while back, we were saying like done for the year. In hindsight, doing the math, like
yeah.
You know what? I'm not super surprised. It's not that. It wouldn't be what Brandon Graham would be pulling off by coming back. You know
It's more understandable, and it makes a lot more sense given the timeline. And again, Hollywood Brown was a big offseason signing for the Chiefs.
Sure.
Got hurt on his first play of the offseason. He caught a ball, got tackled at SE joint dislocation.
Right.
Tried to treat it non-conservatively.
It was after I had drafted him.
Yeah. Tried to get treated conservatively. Didn't really work. Ended up getting surgery. And then was on IR, and then it kind of was just brushed under the rug. He's going for the year. And then December rolls around, and it's like, oh, Hollywood Brown's going to make his comeback soon.
Right.
And I might have texted you, like, yeah, we definitely swung a miss on that one. We said he was done. But again, we don't just assume that Kansas City's going to make it this far.
Right.
And I think
we probably should.
Yeah. At this rate, they keep finding a way. They've been to 7 straight AFC championship. It's almost just like, it's crazy how the AFC went from Tom Brady and Peyton Manning to all of a sudden it just went right to Patrick Mahomes. They just handed the ball off, if you will, to him, and he's just been in every AFC championship game. And it's like the Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen is the new Brady Manning matchup in the championship.
It's pretty great.
Which is great football.
I have a good story. I don't know if I shared this before. So in the world of orthopedics and orthopedic sports medicine, there's a AOSSM, the Academy of Orthopedic, or the American Orthopedic Society for Sports Medicine. Yeah. And then every year they host the annual meetings, like the big sports medicine meeting. And a few years back, I don't know, 5 or 6 years back, it was in Boston. And then at the meeting, there's a keynote speaker, and Tom Brady happened to be the keynote speaker for this particular year. And he hadn't retired yet. And it was very interesting. He's up there and he's speaking. He's basically, it's like an interview, and they're asking him different questions. And someone asked, he's beginning to wind down to and so basically who do you expect is going to be, who do you look to? Who do you think is the next up and coming great quarterback? Who's it going to be? Who's the kind of the challenge to your throne? And he would not give a name. He wouldn't, he's so competitive. And it was very clear that the guy asking the question is trying to lead him down this road to say Mahomes, and he refused. He just would not cave in. There's some good guys out there. No, they're good play. And he just wouldn't do it. Yeah. And literally, everyone in the crowd is laughing, but he just wouldn't do it.
Oh, yeah.
Part of the reason why he's so great, he's so competitive.
So competitive. Yeah, unbelievable. Those guys who are upper echelon athletes, they have a competitive nature that you and I I can understand it, but I don't know what it's like.
Right.
Because I don't wake up in the morning that angry. It's not angry, but just that focused to do that so much to be better than that many other people. You know what I mean? It's just a different level of beast.
Of anger.
The quote unquote,
not anger, but competitiveness.
Just elite folks, that quote unquote Mamba mentality to give an ode to Kobe Bryant. That mentality is completely different.
Right.
And that's why those few people are the greatest of the greats, because they have that X factor.
Yeah. And it was amazing to see the refusal to acknowledge anybody else even coming close to his greatness. Yeah.
And I mean, it's going to take a while. And if you think about it, really, like if it weren't for Eli Manning and Nick Foles, Tom Brady would have 10 Super Bowls.
Amazing, right?
And it's crazy to think about.
And not just the two of them, like with Eli Manning, right? There was two, but like, for one of the two, and for Nick Foles, like incredible, amazing plays that made the difference.
Oh yeah, the helmet catch,
right,
the strip sack,
yeah,
and
that helmet catch play, like I mean.
Yeah.
Eli Manning had like ups and downs, but like that one moment, like it goes down as like one of the greatest moments in sports history. Like I don't know. I thought it was
it's one. It's
both
one of the
sides of the ball, getting the pass off and the catch,
yep.
on both sides. Like it was just amazing.
Oh yeah, it was just one of those plays that you don't understand how this even works.
How did that happen?
It just and even you can even flip it to talk about Tom Brady again in the Atlanta Super Bowl, that Julian Edelman like double catch. He dropped it and caught it before it hit the ground, and they make the comeback happen. It just And that's what the beauty of the Super Bowl is. These crazy plays happen. And these
concussed. Not going to go down that road.
Yeah, and all these different things happen. So a couple things to note for the Chiefs from the AFC Championship game. Safety Justin Reed, defensive tackle Chris Jones, linebacker Nick Bolton, and kick returner Nico Remigio. I'm probably butchering that name. All left the game at some point with some kind of injury, but came back.
Okay.
So, again, I don't have much injury or what it was, but just something to keep an eye on, right? Like, there's most of the time, if you get injured and you see the medical staff and you can get put back into play, likely not that bad.
Yeah.
But sometimes there is a chance where it's like, yeah, we pushed it a little too far. You're going to have to kind of...
You're going to sit next time.
You're going to sit a little bit. This might take a little bit longer. So there might be some people from that list that I just say who you might see on the injury report might not practice those first couple of days if there is something significant that we don't know about.
Yeah.
And then to go back a little bit, people who are on the injury report for the Chiefs going into the AFC Championship game, Patrick Mahomes with an ankle, offensive tackle Jawan Taylor with the knee, guard Mike Caliendo with the shoulder, and cornerback Jalen Watson. I didn't put it I think he was a knee or an ankle. So you had these guys, it's football. They're going to get banged up. They're going to have stuff on the injury report.
Yeah.
So just all names that you should kind of look at and see what's going to happen going forward once these reports are coming out, and kind of see how the 2 weeks kind of leading up to the Super Bowl is going to happen. Because, I mean, obviously Patrick Mahomes is a pretty big name for the Chiefs, but we all know that he can play a Super Bowl with a bad ankle pretty well.
The Eagles know that all too well.
Yeah, way too well. You got Chris Jones, who's a big force on their defensive line, so who knows what that's going to be, and it's something to keep an eye on because, I mean, that changes the game up a little bit. Yeah. If you look at the Commanders, they lost a defensive tackle and offensive lineman before the game, and the Eagles, and I think that played a role for them as well.
It's a factor.
It's a big thing.
This is a little bit of a ridiculous statement, but I think the Chiefs benefited from injuries this year.
Wow.
You were going to say the same thing?
On the same page, yep.
Right? Because DeAndre Hopkins is a byproduct of the Hollywood Brown injury, right?
And a Rasheed Rice injury.
Yeah, exactly. The Rasheed, and then Isaiah Pacheco goes down, signed Kareem Hunt, who looks really good.
Really good.
Yeah. His biggest issue was the baggage that came with him, right? Like from some off-field stuff. But like now they have Pacheco and Hunt.
And like you said, you literally what I was going to go into was just
I didn't mean this to get
No, it's perfect timing of just like you mentioned, like just how these oddities of like bad time, like you tell me on paper before any transactions are made that the Chiefs are going to lose their starting running back and Isaiah Pacheco on both of their top receivers in Hollywood Brown and then Rasheed Rice, and they're still going to make the Super Bowl and be fine. It's like, I don't know how that's going to work.
Better than they were at the beginning of the season.
And I don't know if they have. I didn't look it up, but I'm not sure if they have any defensive injuries that cost them a little bit of time or whatnot. But Isaiah Pacheco missed week 3 to 12 with a fractured fibula, and then like you said, they signed Kareem Hunt, who just to be in decent shape, made a little reunion with the Chiefs because they drafted him and let him go.
Yeah.
And now they're splitting carries for the most part. I read some, and this morning when I was doing my stuff, I saw like based off the numbers, they're almost splitting carries almost down to the line, like half and half. And then the Chiefs also signed a well-known backup running back, Samaje Perine, in the offseason too.
He has some nice plays.
They have him too, so they have a 3 good running back room, if you will.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, whereas I feel like, at least in comparison, if you will, of Saquon Barkley, Shipley, and Gainwell compared to Kareem Hunt, Isaiah Pacheco, and Samaje Perine, they're all 3 good athletes. Good point. Good, but then obviously Saquon is way above
the highest
Gainwell
ceiling.
And Shipley, but I think they kind of even each other out because he's just so good, and they're all just so I feel bad saying average, but they put up the average numbers together.
I think
by
Gainwell
committee they do really well.
Or Shipley could be good running backs.
Yes.
Really on any other team. Just they're behind
Saquon Barkley,
the best running back in the game. Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see kind of how all that unfolds. And like we said, if in the event that Gainwell is out with this concussion, if there's some lingering issues, then it'd be interesting what the Eagles do in the running back position.
Right.
I don't know who they have on the practice squad that would be elevated up, or what the case would be, or if they make a signing of any sort. So just things to kind of follow. But, it just, at one point in time, as an Eagles fan, you're going to hope that the Kansas City Chiefs with luck runs out at the right time. And hopefully it kind of comes on.
As a Steelers fan, we hope that their luck runs out eventually.
Yeah. And I think it's going to be an interesting Super Bowl. It's going to be, hopefully it's exciting, and see what happens. As an Eagles fan, you know where my head's going to be.
So here's a little bit of a maybe an unfair question. Are you more optimistic going into this game than you were going into the Super Bowl a couple years ago?
I would say probably yes, only because there is a much more comfortable feeling with our defense.
Right.
I feel
it's really good.
Really good. And I think all those guys that we got from Georgia, all the guys we got from Georgia, like Georgia pipeline, if you will, they're finally trying to.
Well done, Howie.
Yeah. They're starting to flourish. Like I mentioned, Nolan Smith already. We talked about Nakobe Dean. Unfortunately, he was having a great year. He's out now.
Yeah.
Again, we mentioned Zach Bond, who's having a fantastic year.
Yeah. Jalen Carter, right?
Yeah. And Jalen Carter is just phenomenal. I'm pretty sure in the NFC Championship game, he gave a guy a concussion just by slapping his helmet too hard. Like he knocked one of their offensive linemen down.
It's not fair, man.
He's just too big. Like that guy is just huge. He's a savage, and he's super athletic.
And there were a few very, very slick picks. What's his name on My Lotto and whatnot? Sort of left of center type picks that have just paid off. If you get those things to work out, come on.
And I mean, you just think about just like the AJ Brown trade during the draft. That's
good move.
Phenomenal.
Yeah. Took a chance on Devontae, who's been great, right? And he's held up. Small guy. That was the knock on him, but he's been able to pull it. You know?
And I mean Dallas Goedert, you kind of developed him really well.
I gotta tell you, Ertz looks
good. And that's another thing that I talked to one of my buddies is it's not good that Zach Ertz, the 30-plus-year-old guy, is your number one target on the stat sheet. Like, you guys need some people to, build around.
Yeah.
And I think it's just it changes the game a little bit. Now the running game is kind of important, and as Washington had Brian Robinson Jr. and Eckler, but they just weren't producing that well.
Yeah.
You go get a stud running back. I think Washington Commanders are a different team come the next couple of years.
Yeah, they're a team to look out for.
They're not going to go anyway anytime soon. I don't think Jaden Daniels is going to have any regression.
Yeah. Hopefully it doesn't have an RG3 situation.
Yeah, you hope at this rate you just hope he stays healthy just to see what happens. It'll be curious to see how this young guy has a career, what it pans out to be.
He's Lamar reincarnate. I feel like and maybe a better thrower. Lamar can be incredibly good as a thrower, but he does go through sometimes those spells where what's going on? What's happening?
Yeah. So it'd just be interesting to see, and I think if we didn't have so much stuff to talk about next week and lined up, we would do a Super Bowl preview a little later. But
we'll probably do a little bit of both.
Yeah, we'll touch on it a little bit, but I think we wanted to hammer out the stuff tonight just to get through some stuff because, there's a lot of things going on and there's a lot of speculation. So I guess to kind of, before we go wrap up, what are your thoughts? Does Brandon Graham play? To kind of wrap up our show here.
Sorry, my prediction is no.
I'm going to venture to say that he doesn't. I'm going to agree with you. I just don't think the timing adds up. If he does, it's one of those things where, like we said, it makes sense why it happens. If he's somewhat functional to some capacity, it's a very nice nod from the Eagles to give a veteran that experience.
If he does, I think he has a brace on, basically absorbing a lot of the strain and the pressure, and I think it's really done because it's Brandon Graham, and it's a nod to a guy who's giving the organization an awful lot. Yeah, and I think at maximum, and we're talking like extreme max, if he does plays, I don't think he's playing over 10 plays. It is fun to talk about, though.
It is. It's it is killing, Philadelphia media right now. Brandon Graham's all over the place if he's playing or not. So we're going to, again, this is going to be developing as we go on. By the time our show comes out, we might have news already, and we'll add it to, and we'll see what happens.
Just finished Swamp Dog Porter, Nitro, and just awesome. Right.
Oh, yeah.
And a little news, there's been a transition.
Oh, yeah.
Congratulations to Frank in building quite a product phenomenal beer. We talk about it all the time,
All the
right?
time.
And he's sold, right? Like,
Yep.
so with the Neck of the Woods Brewery, the plan is keep things the same, man.
Yep.
Things have been working. They're pretty happy with the way things go. But congratulations for Frank for being able to build this product, to build something that had value, so that he could, he could, and we'll get him back on.
Yeah,
later.
it's not the end of what you'll be hearing of Frank, but like we said, there's a little bit of new management here at Neck of the Woods.
We met Mike tonight.
Yeah,
we're gonna meet. Hopefully, we'll meet his brother John. Maybe get him on in the not so distant future.
Yeah. So again, before we go ahead and wrap up our show like we always do, we do want to give a quick shout out to our sponsors, and one of them is Neck of the Woods. And with the new management, they still are sponsoring us. They still are here, supporting us,
hooking us up.
We're going to be recording the show here every week like we always do.
That's the best part.
That's the best part. That we're not changing much. We're still going to get delicious beer, some of the best beer in South Jersey.
Heck yeah.
We're still going to come at all you awesome folks and give you all the best sports news that we can find. So again, shout out to Neck of the Woods Brewing Company. Virtual Orthopedics and Spine, from runner's knee and dog walker's hip, they have a doc for that. Yard work back and laptop wrist, they have a doc for that too. Virtual Orthopedics and Spine has over 120 providers, over 20 PT and rehab facilities, and more than 25 surgical centers all across South Jersey. So find the right specialist for you at virtual.org/ortho. And lastly, Timberreel Production, helping us get us all this on audio, video, on our socials. We appreciate you, Kyle, and everything you do for us. So folks, we'll see. Kyle's the man.
Guy's great.
We'll see you next time. Like I said, we have another show lined up for next week, and then see what happens in the Super Bowl. Go Birds!